Well, hello everybody. My name is Chelsea Lewis and I hope that you're having a fantastic day. I'm excited to get started today. Well, as you know, often things don't go exactly how you plan, and this webinar is an example of that. I am recording this webinar because I have just had a baby. So as the webinar progresses, feel free to leave comments and interact normally, and I'll check back in at a later date to answer specific questions and send them out to the webinar attendees. Nevertheless, I am delighted that you're here, and I know that your time is valuable, so I will make sure that I make every minute of the session worth it to you. If you want to share this on social media or talk about something you learned today, you can use the hashtag #DATDesignProgram. It would also be a great way to ask any post-webinar questions that might pop up for you and allow me to connect with you after the webinar, which I would really love to do since I cannot connect with you now. I want to remind you that you'll get the most out of this webinar if you limit your distractions. So turn off your phone or put it on Do Not Disturb mode. Put it away from you. Close all the windows on your computer. Maybe even get up and go close the door so that you can focus your full attention here for the next 60 minutes. And I've got some awesome stuff coming your way, and I really don't want you to miss anything. So a little about me. We did just deliver our baby girl this month, and we live in the beautiful Midwest state of Kansas. I taught for 7 years in a high school arts classroom. I taught general art, graphic design, photography, and yearbook. And currently, I stay home and focus my remaining attention between those beautiful kiddos and the digital art teacher community. And if you want to go ahead and leave some comments, I can view them later. And I want to know a little about you. If you could tell me where you're from and what you teach, and perhaps how long you taught. I'd love to know that. And you can go ahead and leave those comments. And just to keep things moving, I'll go ahead and move on. Let's first establish what you can expect from today. By the end of the webinar, you will know which online program will work best for both you and your students as you move forward into uncertain teaching conditions this fall. After I finish reviewing each program, I will have a time where you can ask specific questions about what it might look like to teach with these programs in your classroom. And if you stay all the way to the end, I do have a special gift, so make sure you stick around so you can find out what it is. Basically, I want you to walk away from here with a full understanding of the main online design programs available, confidence in choosing the right program for your classroom, some tips and resources to use in your classroom for day one, no matter what day one looks like for you, and hopefully you'll actually be able to start the year excited instead of dreading it and feeling overwhelmed. To start out, I wanted to give you permission to say this sentence. I don't know. Is that hard for you? I've gotten over that particular fear myself, but it was incredibly hard for me to pass that hurdle when I first started teaching. When a student would ask a question and I didn't know the answer, I would almost break into a sweat trying to figure out how to answer it without looking like an idiot. And maybe that's not an issue for you, but if it is, just know that there will be days, especially in light of the way that things look right now in the classroom, and with our topic today, that you won't be able to answer all the questions, and there will likely be problems that you won't be able to solve right away. And in fact, openly admitting that you don't know something makes you a little bit more down to earth and more approachable, which is something I think high school students need to see. So give yourself a little grace and remember, tomorrow is another day. Now, on to our topic, which is the best online program, the right fit for your classroom. I'm giving this webinar because for some reason, all of a sudden, there seems to be a huge surge in online design program popularity among art teachers. Now, why was that? Right, the whole global pandemic thing and students learning from home with no Adobe accessibility and, well, a lot of technical difficulties. As I thought about how to approach this problem, I thought the best way would be to test them out with you with the same metrics and the same projects to see what would work best for your classroom. So I hopped on Facebook and I did some Facebook Lives, and I walked through each program just as if I was a student coming through it for the first time. And like I said, I used the same two projects for the Illustrator programs and for the Photoshop copycat programs, just to get an idea of what they would look like. It wasn't always pretty, but I think it gave me a pretty good idea of what to expect and a chance to interact with you guys along the way, which is always a plus. I'll have the links to these Facebook Lives available at the end of this webinar if you're interested on this cheat sheet. But I will warn you that some of them are pretty rough. The cheat sheet will also include anything we talk about today, plus a few helpful hints if you'd like to check them out. So before assessing a program to see if it could be used in a classroom, I took it through an elimination round, if you will. In order to make the cut, a program had to be usable online, because too many teachers were talking to me about the need for a program to be online to even consider using a downloadable program. It had to be free for the main functions of the program. If there were a gross amount of premium features, I dropped it. It had to run successfully on a computer without high resolution or quality. If there were serious lag issues, then I couldn't consider using it for a graphic design or digital photography class. And lastly, if you couldn't save the files used on the computer for later use, then what was the point? Thus, sadly, I had to say goodbye to Inkscape and GIMP. Inkscape, while it had most of the functionality of Illustrator, there was simply no way to save the files without updating to a $7 a month plan or downloading the program. It seemed unlikely that a school would do this. Plus, the online program was, or the online version of this program was extremely painful due to lagging issues. Therefore, Inkscape was eliminated. GIMP gave similar lagging issues in the online version, and it had some unfortunate glitches that made it difficult to design in. It wasn't easy to use, and it was very different from Photoshop, and I feared that students who were used to using Photoshop would really struggle with it. Therefore, GIMP was eliminated. For the remaining programs, let me tell you how we're going to do this review today. These are the metrics which I used for each review. I looked at the ease of use, the similarities to Photoshop or Illustrator, the reliability of the program, the ease of saving files, the paid feature prices. Not that I'm promoting a purchase of any of these. I just want you to be aware of what is available and what will be limited by using a free version. And to sum it all up, I have a list of pros and cons. And just as a disclaimer, I tested these programs using 2 of my tried and tested units, just like I did, or like I mentioned earlier in those Facebook Lives. So I didn't go through every single capability of these programs, but I believe that I explored them sufficiently enough to give this review. All right, let's dive in. Illustrator contender number 1 is VECTR. If you'd like, in the comments, you can give an exclamation point if you've used VECTR before. The first thing that we're going to look at is the ease of use. And the usability was just okay. Some of the functions there are not easy to find or just didn't work, like zooming in or getting the size of your page. Now, I did find these functions, but they were not intuitively placed, and so it caused me a lot of frustration. Similarities to Illustrator, they did have a good range of fonts, but the layout is completely different, and it would take some getting used to for students to use this program. Many of the keyboard commands that you would use in Illustrator also work in VECTR, but some of them didn't, which is to be expected. It seems to be pretty simplified. Functions like a polygon or making a polygon have more points or organizing layers using the Pathfinder and gradient either didn't work or they were really difficult to find. For the reliability, it runs pretty smoothly for what it does, and I never noticed any lagging, so that was good. The ease of saving files, you can export as an SVG, a PNG, or a JPEG. The files would need to be stored on their cloud system, or there is a save as function that will allow you to save offline, which I would recommend. And for the paid features, there are none. It's 100% free. But that means that there are some ads in the sidebar. And I don't know if it was the day or if it's a normal thing, but VECTR's ads seem to be more flashy and more annoying than some of the other programs. So the pros and cons, you can easily use it online. It has a simple layout, it's smooth and professional, there were no lagging issues, and there's no need to pay for a premium version. For the cons, the ads are pretty annoying as they constantly flashed in the sidebar. And as I said, it seemed more distracting than some of the other programs. And it seemed like everything was a little oversimplified. It was hard to complete the logo project I picked out without a few of the key functionalities that seemed missing. And lastly, the layout was completely different from Illustrator. Okay, now we're going to switch to the website. This is what it looks like when you first get in here. And yours will say something like get started, I think, and you'll have to enter an email. But once you get yourself set up, you'll have a profile, and this will be your URL up here. These are the things that I have worked on in this program. And opening a file, or creating a new file rather, opens up the program right away. And this took me some getting used to, but in order to set the size of your page, You have to come down here and then you can set them custom, or you can choose from the list. If you want to open something that you have worked on in Illustrator, it is possible. You will just have to save it as an SVG. So let me drag that in here and show you what that looks like. Since I have a lot of different fonts in this file, it is taking a minute, and we're going to get a lot of errors that pop up over here in a minute due to the fact that there are a lot of fonts in here that are not available in VECTR. But just to zoom out a little, you can see what I put in here. I had 2 artboards, and then I had a lot of stuff in the sidebar over here that I played with. And so that's what it looks like. You can use extra artboards. They call them pages over here. So if I wanted to have an extra page, I would take all of this, Command X to cut it, hopefully. Let's try again. I'll do Command C. Should work. Worked earlier today. And then adding a page. And I think that it's running slow because of all of these things that I've got here. So instead of trying to wait for it, I will go ahead and leave this page and show you a page I did earlier that will show you what it looks like, at least hopefully. This is what I was talking about, that sometimes there's a little bit of lag and you just never know. You may have to restart your Chrome or your browser occasionally with these online programs. But let's open up this one. And I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so these are the layers with all of the texts and paths and everything that imported from my SVG. Here are the pages, page 1 and page 2, where I was able to move those. Like I said, it may have just taken a really long time to load all of the fonts and everything that was on that file. As far as the page layout, these are the differences. Obviously, you've got pages, or artboards is what they would be, and layers are over here. And on this side, just whatever you have selected will determine what is over here. So if I click on text, it should change from some of these other things. Anyway, saving a file looks like this. You have to click export. These are what you can export to. So if a student is still working, they would choose SVG, and if they're ready to turn it in, maybe a JPEG or a PNG. Also, they could turn this link into you. That is a link to this specific file. So that's kind of handy. They wouldn't necessarily even have to turn in a page if you wanted to do it that way. And if I were to exit here, all the files should automatically save in this dashboard area. However, I would have them download them and save them offline just in case, because you never know. Okay, so if you have any questions about Vector before I move on, you can go ahead and ask them, and I will come back and take a look and send you answers at a later date. But let's go ahead and move on to GRAVIT. Illustrator contender number 2. And if you've used GRAVIT before, you can go ahead and leave an exclamation point in the comments. And let's get started. GRAVIT runs very smoothly. I did have a few problems with finding tools and making them work the way I expected them to. But I think after a student gets used to the way that things run in GRAVIT, then they should be able to make it work for classroom purposes. Similarities to Illustrator, zoom and moving around the page is easy. It's as you would expect it to be in Illustrator. And while the layout is different, it's not annoyingly so. It did have a good range of fonts. The main functionalities of the program work similar to Illustrator. For example, the palette in the right sidebar is controlled by the objects that you have selected, which is the same as Illustrator. And the keyboard commands are pretty much the same. The program ran seamlessly in the browser, and I never did notice any lag with this one. So that's good. You can export files as PNG, JPEG, or PDF, but the working files stay in a GRAVIT format, which I will show you here in a little bit what that looks like. You have the option to save files on the cloud service, or you can download them onto your computer. The paid features, though there is a paid version available, the free online version worked seamlessly. The paid version is $49 a year, and the main benefit is that you can work offline, which is not our desired outcome anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem for you to use the free version. Also, because they advertise their paid version, there are no annoying ads, and that is a big plus. To sum it up, here are pros. The features are extensive, and all of the tested features worked after a little bit of research. And there were no intrusive ads, no need to pay for the premium version. The free version had everything that I needed. And it's easy to save files, both to export them and to save and update them later or edit them later. The cons, certain minimal features are only available in the premium version, and finding tools the way that students are used to, it may take a little time for them to get used to it. And before we go in and look around in GRAVIT, I wanted to show you that when you first get in, you would click Get Started, and then students would have to sign up and enter their email to use the program. But after that, they would get something that looks a bit like this. So there's that Get Started. They would need to sign up, enter their email and stuff, but then they would end up with this page. So they could start a new one, and it's really easy to set your size and change your size type. You can get files from their cloud. These are the two that I have worked on this program so far. So that's what this looks like. You can open a file from the computer, and again, it would have to be an SVG. So why don't we go ahead and do that? And we'll do the same thing we did with the other program. It might seem strange because, as you know, I had stuff on the sides, and they're still there, but you just can't see them in this program on the sidebars. So if a person was going to try to put things onto artboards, then same thing as VECTR, where you've got 2 pages. These would be your artboards, and I would paste it. There it is, and I could just move it right in there. It has those guides for me to show me that that's going to be centered, and there I have 2 artboards, which are called pages in this program. Layers are also on this side, similar to VECTR. And similar to VECTR, the sidebar over here gives you options for the object that you have selected. You have the option bar up at the top and the menu bar. There are spattered about some pro things, like if you want to have a master page, which I'm not even sure what that would do, exporting specific or more options, that would be a pro version, and this is the only tiny little ad that they have for their services, and it doesn't even flash or anything, so that's nice. And then to save files, you do have a save, and that would just save it here, and you would add that one. I already have this one on here, so I'm not going to save it right now. But if you wanted to export, you could export it here, and these are the options for exporting: PNG, JPEG, and PDFs. Again, more advanced options for the pro. But for the purposes of a graphic design classroom, I think that these would be enough options. Okay. And before I move on, just to remind you, you can go ahead and leave a comment about GRAVIT, and I will answer those at a later date. But I'll go ahead and move on to Pixlr. This is Photoshop contender number 1, and if you've used Pixlr, if you want to leave an exclamation point in the comments, that'll let me know. But let's jump into the review. Pixlr's ease of use, I would say that it is designed for the amateur, which works great for us. And the program worked really well as long as there were no website issues. And I did have a few while I was testing. Again, with online programs, I think you can expect a need to restart the browser occasionally. It's just something to remind students of. Similarities to Photoshop. Okay, so this is a big deal. There are 2 versions, and you need to make sure that students are in the correct version, which is E. Because X, which stands for Express, is super simplified, and it has really simplified capabilities, or limited capabilities. The E stands for Editor, and it is a much closer comparison to Photoshop. So that's very important. Restoring functions did work well, and what I'm talking about there is healing brush, clone stamp, burn, dodge, color adjustments, things like that. Tools and functions are in different places, and it could take a little while for students to learn the way to do things that they're used to doing. Layers work differently. For example, you can't put images in folders or select more than one layer at a time. You can only use pixels to create new documents, so you can't create a letter size page, for example. You would need to know how many pixels you want before assigning it. But the keyboard commands work well. They seemed pretty similar. Reliability. I did have some issues with the sizing of my screen, but when I went back to test it again, I couldn't replicate these issues. So again, I guess it would be a case of needing to restart the browser to fix any small issues that you might end up having. The ease of saving files. You can save as a JPEG, PNG, WebP, or a PXD. And while the files do save in the history of the website, I wouldn't trust it. You can save files as that PXD when students are still working on it, and then as JPEGs when they're ready to turn them in. And every time you go to save a file, it downloads directly to the desktop in the file that you've chosen. So that makes things a little bit simple, actually. The paid version, the biggest disadvantage of using the free version is the ads, but I didn't feel like they were too annoying. There were also a few features that were only available in the paid version, but I didn't feel like these features were essential for using graphic design or digital photography functions for the classroom. And to sum things up, for our pros, I felt like Pixlr was really easy to use, and while there were ads, they were not too obtrusive. It was easy to save files and continue working on a project, and it had a very simple exporting process. And the cons, there might be possible issues with the screen, so students may have to restart the window, and I felt like some of the features were a little oversimplified. Okay, let's move to Pixlr. This is what I was talking about with Pixlr E or Pixlr X. Definitely want the E. This is what the dashboard looks like. These are all my recent files. And to create a new file, that's right here. This is what I was talking about with needing to know specific pixel sizes, because you can't change that. There are some size recommendations here. These are mostly for using on social or on the web, which I suppose you should expect for an online program. If you want to open a file, you could either click here for Open Image, and you can also click and drag. I've just got a photo here that will open. You have these three options. If a student has issues with a lot of lagging on a program, I would suggest that they try a smaller resolution. I'll go ahead and do the original. Now this is what your window looks like. And it does look like it has a pretty similar layout as Photoshop. It's just relatively simplified. So you have the tools here on the side. The option bar at the top gives you options for the tool that you have selected. There's the menu bar, and on this side you've got layers and history, and this is where you can also zoom in and out. File saving. If you save a file, it will automatically download to your desktop. Students are still working on an image, they should use this PXD. If they're ready to turn it in, then they would use the JPEG and download. And there's some more ads. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Go ahead and leave their questions about Pixlr, and I will answer them at a later date. And lastly, for PHOTOPEA, Photoshop Contender number 2. If you've used PHOTOPEA, you can go ahead and leave a an exclamation point in the comments. But let's go ahead and talk about the ease of use. I felt like Photopea was really easy to pick up, especially if you're used to using Photoshop. It feels very similar to Photoshop. If you have Photopea and you've heard that it's essentially a Photoshop copy, well, that is really quite true. Most of the tools and functions are in the same locations. Most of the keyboard shortcuts are the same, and creating and saving files feels very similar to Photoshop. The reliability, it seems pretty good. It might be a little robust for simpler operating systems, and this may mean that students will need to restart their web browser or perhaps even their computer when things start running slow. Ease of saving files. There are lots of file formats for you to export to. You can save files as PSDs, and this means that you can not only come back to them later to work on files in Photopea, but you can also take Photopea files and then finish them in Photoshop if you want to, which is pretty cool. No cloud saving system. Everything saves straight to your downloads, and I think that makes things pretty simple. There are no paid features. It's 100% free. But there are some sidebar ads, but when I was using it, I didn't feel like they were too obtrusive. So for your pros and cons, so Photoshop and Photopea are very similar. It is easy to find the tools and functions because of this. It runs very smoothly, and it's easy to save your files so you can export or import Photoshop documents. For the cons, there was some lagging issues, especially when it came to photo editing tools, and so they may need to restart their browser occasionally. But here we go. Let's hop into Photopea. So this is what you get when you open Photopea. There's no sign up here. There's no enter your email. Nothing like that. You just get in Photopea and you can click new project, open from your computer. There are some templates that I'm not going to go into, and of course you can watch some demos. But clicking new project gives you all of these options. You can choose a letter size if you want to, or a specific photo size. So I think that's pretty handy. But I wanted to show you opening a PSD. Of course, you could click here and find it. You can also click and drag. Here's my PSD. Drag that in there. And it loads for a second, but it really is pretty quick for how much is on here. I've got a lot of layers, and it even pulled in the folder that I had. So I think that's pretty cool. Layers are over here. You've got history and swatches. Things are very similar to what you would expect. All the tools on this side, it's very, very similar. And then to save files, you can save as a PSD. You can also export, and there are a lot of exporting options. I think probably we would be okay with these ones, but you do have a lot of options here. So, does anybody have any questions about Photopea? Go ahead and leave those, and I will come back later and answer them. Okay, that was a lot of reviewing. And if you want to put in your opinion here, which program you think would work best, you can do that. For Illustrator, is it going to be VECTR or GRAVIT? If you want to comment real quick before I give my answer, you can do that, and we'll see if we come up with the same one. For my recommendation, I would say GRAVIT for Illustrator. Not only is it easy to pick up, but it has most of the features needed to complete the average high school graphic design project, and it runs pretty smoothly in your browser. So go GRAVIT. Then for Photoshop, which program do you think would work best for your classroom? Is it going to be Pixlr or Photopea? If you want to comment, you can go ahead and comment. Which one do you think it's going to be? But for my recommendation, I would say Photopea. They're very similar, or it's very similar to Photoshop, and as close as you can get, actually, without using Photoshop. Students who are used to using Adobe programs will feel right at home in Photopea. Also, it runs smooth in the browser. So, go Photopea! And we've made it. Though it may have been a long and arduous process, I enjoyed plowing through these programs and seeing exactly how they could work in the classroom. And I think that though it may be incredibly inconvenient, knowing and using alternate programs is a good skill for both teachers and students these days. Especially when I think about the fact that many of these students will be leaving without Adobe programs, leaving like for the school day and for their school career, so that later they could use these if they wanted to. So if you've made it this far, you do deserve a medal, but I don't have any of those. So I'm going to give you the next best thing. I know that this fall looks so totally crazy for most of you. It's so uncertain, and that even if your school does all the right things and takes all the precautions and makes all the plans and does everything right, that things could change in a moment's notice due to the circumstances of our time. So who knows what you're going to get, I guess. So as my gift to you, I'm going to give you access to our brand new paper-based graphic design unit. Everything here can be either done on paper and sent in, or they could also use a draw program or take pictures and send them in digitally. I know that we've been talking about digital programs, and I fully expect to create and release units on these programs in the future. I think it's highly valuable to have something in your back pocket that's not contingent on technology. And in this unit, you could walk in on day one and beginners can jump in and use it. And I'll have a link to this on the cheat sheet, which I mentioned earlier in our checkout page. So let me go ahead and show you the checkout page, and I'll put a link to this so you can find it. And here will be that sheet to download, and it will look like this. So I know that you're here to get answers for the how-to when it comes to teaching digital arts online, because you want to be the best teacher for your students. And this free unit is a good starting point for you, but it's just a sample of what's available at digitalartteacher.com. And if you want this kind of curriculum in your classroom, then let me open your eyes to something new. What if you never had to search for a graphic design or digital photography unit again? What would you be able to do with the time that you saved by not spending hours in the Pinterest black hole? And I know that you've been there and that you know what I'm talking about. I want to introduce you to Digital Art Teacher membership, and the key benefit to joining is that you would not only eliminate the need to plan another digital lesson, but you'll also have the support of the DAT community behind you. Let me show you the lessons page here so that you can get an idea of what's available. If you can use Photoshop or Illustrator in your classroom, the curriculum here includes a full year of materials for graphic design and 1 full semester for digital photography. You can work straight through the curriculum and then not plan anything for the rest of the year, or you can pick and choose what works best for you. And in the light of our current climate, school climate, that could be a really great option. I'm going to pop into this one here, the graphic design curriculum for art teachers learning design elements through Illustrator CC. This is the computer companion to the free version that you're getting today. There's right here your lesson plan, presentation, checklists, grade sheet, worksheets, test and reviews, and even some examples. And the different lessons will include specialized items that work best for each concept. And as we scroll down, you see the video series for this unit. These videos are for Illustrator. Each video is slow-paced and easy to understand. And the best thing about it is that you can allow your students, or you, if you're just learning, to work at their own pace. Let's hop into a Photoshop one just so that we can get you some extra views. These first ones are all non-Adobe. They are talking about learning to use the camera and photo composition and camera history, stuff like that. But this one here is your intro to Photoshop. Here you see a few extra files because not only have I provided lesson plans and worksheets and so on, but there's a lot of sample images for you to work with. And then of course, there are videos down here to match. And now before you leave me saying, wait a minute, whoa, wasn't I here to find alternatives to Photoshop and Illustrator? And my answer is yes, absolutely. So as the semester progresses, we'll be adapting to incorporate these online programs, GRAVIT, PHOTOPEA, and then also some non-digital units, like the paper unit that I'm sending you, or these earlier assignments that don't require any Adobe. So back to this checkout page here. As a webinar attendee, you do have a 30% discount today. And here you can get that free paper-based unit. Make sure that you use this code when you go to the page to check out. Again, here's your cheat sheet. And if we scroll down here, this is where you can sign up for the membership. You can get a year, a semester, or a month plan. Of course, you save the most by going with the year. You get 8 months for free, and you save $379. So that is quite a deal. Joining up today will not only save you time now, but you'll also be signing up to get access to monthly new and updated units, including anything I release related to GRAVIT and PHOTOPEA. So, back to here. If you have any questions, either about the programs we discussed today or the full curriculum membership, you can ask them here and now. Again, go ahead and leave these questions. I want you to leave questions, and I want to answer your questions, and I'll send them the answers out to you. I do have a couple of questions that were already sent in to me, so maybe I'll hit one of them here. I did have somebody ask me what makes the DAT membership different from graphic design or digital photography units that you can purchase out there. And the answer to that is DAT has a full comprehensive curriculum. Everything follows in sequence, the lessons build on one another, and you're welcome to skip around and do what works best for you. And these units are constantly being updated, which is important because graphic design and digital photography content is constantly evolving these days. And for a second question related to these programs, I was told that Adobe CC will work on Chromebooks, and is that true? That was a question someone sent in, and unfortunately the only CC programs that work on Chromebooks are the apps like Photoshop Express, Lightroom for mobile, and Adobe Illustrator Draw. And while I have not personally tried these, I have read that they are not robust enough to cover the needs of a graphic design or digital photography class. It would be very difficult to use them with the limited functions that they offer. So those are the two questions that I had already sent in. Please ask and send in questions in the comments and I can view them later. And just a reminder, this year we're offering 1 month, 6 month, and 1 year membership options. I am gonna leave this membership open only through this week, so sign up through this special webinar offer and you'll get that 30% discount on whichever one you choose. You can also post questions if you'd like by using the hashtag #DATDesignPrograms. I can answer them on my Facebook page there. So if you'd like to and you think of something later, feel free to do that. And that wraps things up. Thank you so much for joining me today. Remember that the membership will only be open for the remainder of this week, and that special webinar sale is only available with this offer. So please don't wait. I'm so excited to connect with you, and I hope that you can either have gotten started or are ready to start a fantastic year. Thanks again for showing up, and I hope to see you soon in the membership. Catch you next time.